Okay, back to the Grand Canyon. Let's see. When was it we went to the Grand Canyon anyway?
Oh, let me see. I have to figure it out.
You're going to get over here to be able to talk on the microphone. Don't think you'll live.
Denise was 9 years old, and she's now 40.
June of 65.
Yeah, I guess so. It's close enough.
It was about June of 1965. We went to the Grand Canyon. Jack, Skippy, Denise, Helen, and myself. And let's see, this is, the camera's sort of messing up there a little bit. This is flying out, leaving the Grand Canyon. I guess we're heading in the direction of Boulder. No, that was after Boulder, Colorado. We was heading, where were we heading there? Where are we at there?
That's the Grand Canyon, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. I don't know. Our tracking is off, I guess. Anyway, that's a lookout point there. Let me get this tracking adjusted. Now that's all taking from the rim up on the canyon. I guess it just looks like we're in a plane. We're really shooting down into the canyon. That's around sunset, and all the shadows that are in the canyon. Jack with the sun on the west wall of the canyon. Or no, that'd be on the east wall. That'd be sunset, so I guess that'd be the east wall of the canyon. Any way you look at it, that's a big hole in the ground. 5,000, well, it's right at 1 mile from the top, or up on the rim where we're standing, to the bottom of the canyon. So roughly 5,300 feet.
You notice Jack's not doing any too much messing around there. He's sort of careful.
In those days, there wasn't a whole lot of guardrails up on the rim. I guess now there's so many tourists there.
Uh-oh. Bill's got his shorts on.
Oh yeah, they got me in them Bermuda shorts.
There's Denise.
Well, now we got to be in the canyon, surely.
You and Jack went solo riding down in it, and me and Skippy stayed at the motel one time.
That was after we got to Las Vegas. We went out to the Death Valley.
Okay.
Now, I guess we're leaving there. We're in the plane on our way to on out to Las Vegas. I guess we're flying over, or getting near the, no, the Painted Desert is before we got to Albuquerque, New Mexico. So that's not the Painted Desert. Uh-oh, that's where the camera was on and locked down. Nobody knew it was running, so we get a lot of well, some of the instruments. There's the fuel gauge. A little less than half tank on that particular tank. We've got 3 tanks. Right wing, left wing, and the auxiliary tank. In the sky. Somebody got it in their hand. I guess Jack was holding it in his hand. And okay, now we're fixing to come in. Gosh, that must be Las Vegas we're coming into, unless that's that little town east of Las Vegas, northeast. No, that's got to be Las Vegas, big as that is. I guess we're coming in for a landing. There, we're stuck down again. On the trigger that operated the camera, if you pulled it all the way down, it would lock and keep on running without holding it. Oh, I guess Jack was making that mistake of pulling it all the way down instead of just halfway down where it would spring back up to the off position. I'm going to run the audio up, make sure that I'm getting audio through. It'll start squealing if we are. Yep, I guess we are. So just want to check and make sure we are in fact recording. Don't want to talk on this sucker and not get any recording. That's coming into Thunderbird Airport at Las Vegas. This is a Tropicana. It's you can see who's playing there at their theater. But of course, Tropicana's everything there. There's a gambling casino, hotel. They've got everything you need to stay right there in the Tropicana. Restaurants, gambling casino, the slots, well, just what Las Vegas is noted for. There's the Mata Casino, Motel, etc., Moulin Rouge, Tahiti, Black Forest. That's not a gambling casino. It must have been just probably a German restaurant. This is just driving down the strip. And at that time the strip was roughly 14 miles long. There's the Desert Inn. There's the Morocco, La Concha, Algiers, Thunderbird, we didn't realize that Golden Nugget, the Sahara, that you could stay at one of those fancy casinos in their motels, which were fantastic, just fabulous, for just as cheap as you could stay at the cheaper place. We drove and found a little older motel, didn't have any restaurant or gambling casino or anything, and stayed at $14 a day, and we could have stayed in the finest casino in town for that price with the royal treatment, because they will keep their prices rock bottom to keep people staying there. They know that they're going to gamble, play the slots, and the motel's not where their money's at. It's in the slots and the gambling, or just the gambling. It includes the slots. Well, the motel we stayed at was okay. We had a little cabin. It was just that we could have stayed in one of the real ritzy, fancy places for the same price. And of course, when you went into the airport there, the private pilot's lounge, they gave you free welcome wagon tickets for breakfasts, dinners, and gambling stakes and everything else. To get you get the tourists more or less hooked on the gambling, get them started. They go all out to make you feel welcome and get you in the gambling spirit. And that's the motel we stayed at. That's our little cabin. That's the swimming pool. A little bit small compared to what we'd have had in the Olympic size if we'd stayed at a major like the Thunderbird. Or
we had privacy there though.
Yeah.
That meant a whole lot.
That was a real nice vacation, just a fantastic trip. This is where Jack and I made a trip out to Death Valley. When we got out to the airport there in Death Valley, it was closed because the heat was over 140 degrees on the desert floor, and that didn't give enough density to take off. So had we landed, we would have had to wait until late that night or real early in the morning to have enough density and cooler air, which cooler air gives, to be able to take off. That's the mountain range around the Death Valley desert area. I should say this is the mountain range around the Death Valley area. Well, I guess we're back. I thought we'd taken a picture. Oh well, we're all the way back. No, we was just checking out the airport. The airplane there, I guess, that we got back from Death Valley, because there's the Golden Nugget gambling casino. And this is motel. Helen and Skippy. And Jack in the background. I don't know who this is. Maybe somebody just... Whoop, we're back. Guess we run out of film because we're back at Mom and Dad's when they were still living on the farm, which they lived on the farm down east of Upton at that time. There's Granddad, Hawkins, Grandpa. And this is Tony. Whoop. Didn't get much Tony, but there's Tony again. And let's see, where the fountain, let's see. It's got to be in Minneapolis. Or St. Paul 1. We're in the park. Wind. The fountain made... No, the wind's blowing that water spray some, it looks like. So it's wind blowing a little strong. Well, you can see the leaves bending. Yeah, oh, we're down at the... St. Paul Park. Botanical Gardens, Weller Zoo, everything was just fantastic. But it's a very large city, and so the population supports a large park zoo area. one large bear. And Tony's favorite, the choo-choo train. And Tony he was getting close to, well, about 3 years old there. Of course, he couldn't miss hitting the puddle hole when he was running along, as you noticed. Had to splash a little water, but that's still in the park. The amusement ride, the rides. He driving that horse. He trying them all out. At the back seat on that police car cruise. And the cotton candy. Hey, that's Fitzsimmons General Hospital. We must be back visiting Daryl and Bonnie. Aurora, which is a suburb of Denver, Colorado. Yep, there's Daryl. Let's see now, that must have been Labor Day weekend. We flew down to see him. Let's see where we're going there. Pretty nice lake down there. As I mentioned before on the previous tape, I used to pull the film to tighten it up so it wouldn't be on the take-up spool loose, and it scratched the film. I didn't realize it was scratching the emulsion on the film, and it damaged it. Well, all in all, that film being 40, let's see, close to 40 years old, I guess it's pretty good shape. And it was just this past year that I recorded it on VCR from the old 8mm movie film. And just flying over the mountains area. I guess it's in and around Denver. We're just cruising around a bit. Oh, I think we went down to Silver Springs and I guess we went up to Wyoming just for a short time. Oh, it's only a few minutes, about 100 miles up north of Denver. And we're back on the ground. Yeah, we're in the suburbs of town. We're not downtown, wherever we're at. This must be the weekend we went back in the mountains camping for the weekend. And this is a park. There's... Not sure if that's Bonnie or somebody else. There's Daryl's truck. Must not be the weekend that we went back in the mountains because he doesn't have his camper on the truck. Usually on a long weekend we'd go down to Denver and visit them. They were, well, it was between 700 and 800 miles from where we were at to where they's at, so it didn't take an awful long time to fly down there. Over there, according to which way you look at it, I guess it more was over than down. There he's got his camper on. Oh yes, their mother went with, it was Wanda's mother, went with us back in the mountains. And we're getting a little elevation now, starting up the mountainside. If you've ever been in Denver, you know it lies at level pretty much, but the Rocky Mountains run right alongside of it and are quite impressive. It's shooting down the valley toward the city. And we would stop at a pullover now and then. There's Bill Cody's Buffalo Bill. His grave where he was buried. And of course this is still Labor Day weekend of 64 65 or 66. Cooking and eating their dinner, supper or something here. And there's Wanda and Helen and Wanda's mother. And continuing on up the mountain and down some. Some beautiful scenery through there. Not a drive you'd want to make in the wintertime, but summertime's fantastic. This is where we stopped. I had to walk down to the river we were driving alongside of because that sucker was running uphill. I think this is it anyway. It sure looked like it was running uphill to me anyway. May have not been the one. Yeah, there's the river there, but wherever it was we stopped, I walked down to it. We walked down to it. It looked like it was running uphill. Must have been getting some sprinkling rain back there. Cloud coverage though. Looks like it could carry some moisture in some of those clouds. This is a wigwam village that was just deserted. Apparently there had not been enough tourist traffic or something to pay to keep it running. So it had been closed down or something. Some beans cooking on the stove in there, and I guess that fan is being picked up on the microphone. I don't know how sensitive it is, but a pot of beans cooking in there. This is an amphibian or what, outdoor theater. Beautiful, carved and made out of a pink rock. Whoop. That's my airport hangar where I kept the plane. We're back at St. Paul, Minnesota, and there's my plane. The door cranked up, had a cable that cranked it up by. Tony's helped me pull the plane out. We're gonna take it for a spin. Apparently quite often we'd be sitting around and Tony would want to go for a ride, and it never failed. By the time I got airborne, Tony fell asleep. He liked to sleep in that plane, so he'd crawl in that back seat, conk out. I don't know who's taking the pictures. Helen must have went along. She normally did not. Often when we was just going to make a little short cruise around the area. Tony and a friend. Gosh, I don't know. Somebody's underpinnings falling apart there. Well, I guess that's the neighbor, because there's our patio. See the post of the awning. I guess that's our awning, our porch. Tony gonna do some trick riding on his and at the playgrounds. Hadn't been slid on just enough lately that it was very slick. In fact, it had quite a bit of drag to it. I think Tony was having a little trouble in getting to slide on it. It didn't want to let him go. And there's where the dog bit his nose. He was going to make this dog that come up to the fence of our yard, he was going to make that dog smell the flowers. And obviously that dog didn't want to smell the flowers, so it bit him in the nose. He didn't know whether the dog was rabid or not. And the doctor at the hospital ordered some rabies vaccine from Chicago, Illinois, flown in by a Learjet. So they sent had a jet from Chicago fly that serum in special so that he could be administered rabies shots. And they give those suckers in the abdomen, right in the stomach. And when the doctor gave him that first one, he made the comment that if the dog was rabid, the immunization would not save him because it was too close to the brain. Well, needless to say, that was the first and the only shot that was given to Tony, because I told him there'd be no more if it wouldn't save him anyway if the dog was rabid. Okay, that's a little Mustang we got in early '65. In fact, as soon as that 2+2 come out, the slope back, I liked the design, never had seen one, just the picture, and I ordered one of them. Dealer at Hastings, Minnesota ordered it for me. And they said it wouldn't go in the snow in Minnesota too well, so I had big oversized tires put on the rear in the wintertime. And that little sucker would push snow with the bumper and keep on moving just like a tank. I got them tires off a big old Buick Roadmaster, I think it was. Guy had wrecked it. Oh, this is Christmas. There's Aunt Florence. Flash back to Tony. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, this is Christmas back in Kentucky on the farm. I guess. Let's see. Yeah, it's got to be in 60. Christmas of 65. That's Mom, Mammo Hawkins. Uh-oh. I don't know what. There's Helen, Tony, Denise passing out gifts there. I guess Tony's also passing the gifts out. There's Doris, Norman's wife, Skippy, Aunt Florence again. There's Dad, Mom again, me in the corner. Showing off my new sweater I got from somebody. And kids, let's see, now that was Kenneth Glenn. Still showing the sweater off. Jack. Yeah, it was Jack. Who's taking them pictures? They're sort of moving the camera a little bit fast. They're doing too much panning and sort of hard to focus on anybody because it's back and forth so fast. But a lot of people make that mistake taking movies with a movie camera, VCR camera too. Which we didn't have VCR cameras back then. There's Denise, Doris again. That's Norman's wife. Me and Tony. Oh, it's just back and forth, back and forth. Oh, we jumped in the plane and flew down to Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, to Daryl and Wanda's, and that's Tony, and he's got Daryl and Wanda's gifts. We flew down, buzzed Daryl's mother's place, mother and dad. His dad was living at that time. And then we went on to the airport, tied down, and waited for them to come and pick us up. Sniffle, sniffle. And there's at his mom and dad's place, that's Daryl's truck. That's one of his nieces there. I think they were packing up, getting ready to leave. Go back to, I'm not sure if they were from California. It seemed like they were from Bakersfield, California. Now today, when I'm narrating this film, it's the first day of January 1994. Snow outside. Starting to melt a little bit. It's been real cold and it's warming up just a little bit now. But we've been talking about if we didn't narrate this film, we'd never get around to it, and the kids and generations to come, if they watched it, wouldn't have the least idea who anybody was or where the film was taken. And this is in the airplane. I guess we flew back. Oh, I think we took Wanda's dad, some of them up in the plane, and we're just flying around the area. That's a lake in the Walnut Ridge area. And that was his mother and dad's house that we were taking. That's the airport there. Taking pictures of a little earlier. Daryl's parents' house. That was an old World War II airport, very large, nice airport. Hardly any use at all during the years that we were flying in there to visit Daryl and Wanda. And this is after having to make a forced landing in a field on our return just after the Christmas of that year. And I come in with the wheels lowered on the airplane, and it looked like it was going to make it okay, but then the wheels collapsed on, well, first the nose wheel, then the one on the right side collapsed, and it made that prop look like a pretzel. We spent the night in the plane, extremely cold, but we managed to burn strips of navigation charts and keep warm until the next morning, because I tried getting out and walking to a light I could see of a house, but the snow got up to my waist almost. But the next morning I walked along the fence and to the house, and they brought a wagoneer out, picked us all up in the luggage, took us to the house, fed us. It's back to Minneapolis, St. Paul Park, where we live. That's our house, our mobile home. But I had a ruptured oil line on the plane, caused that, and it was losing oil, and I, by choice, decided not to try to make it back over the. It was a pretty big hill, small mountain to get 15 miles back to the airport. So I just lined up looking through the side window since I couldn't see forward. The oil was all over the front windshield, and landed the plane. I wanted to keep that power line in view because I don't want to tangle with one of them suckers. Too much voltage there. Somebody get hurt. And this, yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, the river was all froze over. And they had races out there on the river. We'd drive out on the lakes and all. Ice would be so thick they would plow the snow and build racetracks out on the lakes and all. People would even drive up and down the Mississippi River to and from work when they lived out of town and worked in Minneapolis or St. Paul, because they didn't have traffic and everything to contend with they did on the roads. Once in a while somebody try it before the ice got actually thick enough to support a vehicle good, and them currents underneath can sometimes erode the ice and cause thin spots, and you'd hear about a vehicle crashing through the ice, sinking, or at least getting stuck. That's inside of our mobile home, our home. It's on the couch, Helen and Tony, and that was earlier one was the kitchen. Our shadow box mural. Like Mom and Dad. Mom's got that now. Now there's somebody coming in. I guess I better shut this down for a little while.
Has Tony already come?
Let me cut this off just a second. And this is Tony and me. Back home. There's old Spade. Come think of it, I haven't seen him showing up in a whole lot of the film here lately. And this is back in the park. That's Hiawatha Falls. What we saw earlier is a little trickle of water coming over, and now it's the ice caves. You could go up behind that, and it was beautiful. But it all froze solid, and you got to have been in 40 below zero temperature weather to know how it could freeze like that, or fully understand. And it'll stay that way until summer. But you could go back behind it and go through the caves and just admire the beauty created from the frozen icicles. Somewhat of a monstrosity. But 40 to 50 below zero, and that was not chill factor, that was the temperature. Was not at all uncommon in that part of the country. You could get the plane out and fly for 100 miles without showing any oil pressure because the oil was so stiff. And when you started your car in the morning, I usually kept a tank heater that kept the water in the block warm. You'd hear it clanking and hear metal against metal. This is sliding down the hill. After it started warming up in the real cold weather, it's so cold you can't stand to do that, or at least it's not advisable. You breathe through your mouth and you get frozen, not frozen, but frostbitten lungs. But after the weather started warming up around May, it'd get real nice and make some good sliding weather. And I mean, that thing move on. That was a nice long hill. Wasn't real steep to break your neck, but get you going. We was reluctant to go all the way to the top because you're going faster than you wanted. Well, Tony's having a little trouble staying in the track. And the ice is melting here too, obviously. There's a fish house still out on the river. They drag these little houses out, chop a hole in the ice, sit in there by the heat, and fish. Catch fish like crazy. Of course, since I never did like to fish, I never did really get into it. And this Tony's trailer truck, operated on a battery, and what was the closest thing to a remote control in those days. Had a cable from the remote to the truck. I always have a little trouble with the steering. And this is cemetery. It was a national. Oh, Daryl and Wanda had come. Wait, that was in Minneapolis, I think, the National Cemetery. Can't remember when they come up there, but I guess it was early '66. And Tony seemed like they were, or Daryl was getting ready to head. No, he didn't go to Vietnam until quite a bit later. '67. I think he went to Vietnam. There's Hiawatha Falls running It is now melting. Some ice is still left, even that late. Yeah, this is Skippy's grave. And drive home, the weather was socked in. That's the baby. Skippy died in childbirth. Actually, the child died, and the doctor didn't detect it. Her doctor didn't detect it. And the child, having died, poisoned her system and caused her death. So since we couldn't fly in, we had to drive. It took about 15 hours to drive, but there was icing conditions, and it was just not an icing condition, it was thunder squall all the way from the eastern seaboard way down into Florida. There's no way we could get through according to the weather advisories. So we drove. When we got the call that she had died, and this was after the burial. Quite a bit afterwards, as a matter of fact. I didn't take any film of the actual burial, funeral, or while she was in the funeral home. And we went back home and had a snow, and snow was up over our picket fence. The drifts were so high that we had to dig our way in to even get the door open. Matter of fact, we'd had a warm-up, and I thought the winter was over, so I'd unplugged the heating tapes on the water line and the fuel line, and sometimes you get a little water in your fuel, your diesel, and it would cause freezing, so I always kept a heating tape on that as well because of the extreme cold temperatures up there. .206 St. Paul Park, Minnesota, and the snow melted. Tony's got his tricycle. And back to the zoo. They're in St. Paul again. I hope I got this. Yeah, I got the microphone on. So maybe I better check. I have a microphone on. I haven't checked to see that the sound's recording. See if we get a squeal here. Yep. So we be recording. We was narrating film. Helen and I were narrating some of this film here a few nights ago, and we'd been recording, or thought we'd been recording sound for about 2 hours and a half or more. And so I backed up a little bit after we got finished with what we thought was finishing the particular cassette. We didn't have no sound because I had not turned on the mic. It's got an on and off to it. Tony taking a boat ride this time. For about, let's see, 8 years, he had the, if you can call it, benefit of being the only child, and Troy wasn't born until he was about eight years old, so it's quite a difference in their ages. 5 years, let's see, 63. Oh, it's 5 years difference, about 5 years difference in their age. Not 8, it was 8 years after we got married that Tony was born, and 5 years after he was born that Troy was born. And then Cherie, about a year after Troy, so they're close together and more or less grew up together, where Tony didn't have a brother or sister. And I took my picket fence and made a little bitty fence out of that sucker. Just enough we could let our little dog, Spade, roam in the yard, and that's the mobile home. Roam in the yard without being worried about him getting on the road and getting hit by a car. I bought that mobile home when we was heading from Minnesota here in Radcliffe, Kentucky. Had that sucker towed all the way up there, thinking there wouldn't be any trouble in finding a spot to put it. Well, we lived in St. Paul Park for, I don't know, a year and a half before finally a space became available on the old Fort Snelling, of which this is, and it's now located there. And we liked being out there much, much more, had more room, and there was far less distance to drive to work, fewer people. There was only about 8 or 10, I think it was 8 or 10 mobile home spots in the entire park, and we just enjoyed it much more than we did the one that was 25-mile drive out at St. Paul Park, because I was stationed at what was called Snelling Air Force Station, Snelling Air Force Station. It was across the airport. The airport was in between this place that we lived and where I worked, so I had to drive around the airport, or it would have been a very short distance to where I worked. And this must be on the lake at Nolin. There's Denise. It's got to be one of Louise's boys that she's holding. Louise is Skippy's sister. Couple 3 years younger than Skippy was. And that's Jack's boat. He had by this time got him a boat, I guess. Oh, yes, sure he did. And him and Skippy and Denise were avid lake people. They loved camping on the lake and boating and all that. So most every weekend they were having fun in the water. Oh, that's Donald. That must have been one of Donald. That had to be Kenneth Lynn then. No, because Kenneth Lynn is a little bit older than Tony. I don't know who that little boy was, who that child Denise was holding. We had Jack and Skippy had a nice camping outfit. That's right, Donald and Peggy, they were into boating and all in a pretty big way during those years too. So they must have all been camping there, and we went down with them, or joined them on the lake. There's Peggy. But we'd join them many times on the lake, where there'd be Kentucky Lake. We'd fly down. They'd come over to the airport and pick us up, and we would enjoy the good life with them. And that had to be there at Wax before Jack and Skippy started using the little island that they sort of discovered and developed. At least I think that's where it was. Must be Jack and working on something. I guess they're starting to get ready to move out or something, take it all down. There's Miss McCandless, that's Skippy's mother. Yeah, they're taking it down and loading it into the boat. Jack had so much camping equipment he had to have 6-ply tires on his boat trailer. As he'd load that sucker down, he had a lot of gear. And this seems to be somebody's birthday. Happy birthday, Pap. Oh, It's Dad's birthday, yeah. I guess it was happy birthday, Papa. Or there's Burgess Hawkins, and there's Elsie. Adrian sitting down by her. Burgess, I should say Uncle Burgess. And that's Alice Faye on the end. No, it's Elsie. Oh, okay, and I guess it is with Agents. And there's Paul Cruz and one of his daughters on the end, on the right. And Virgie, Aunt Virgie, was standing. It looks like Miss McCandless. Got a squirrel that's in the front yard back at our home in Old Fort Snelling. Which Fort Snelling sits right between Minneapolis and St. Paul. I'm not sure the area which it's mostly in. That squirrel is working on that apple though. And this, they were going to have a parade downtown. I think it's getting dark. Not sure about what occasion the parade was for. Whether it was a Veterans Day or something like that, or it's just a homecoming for the city. This is just people in the dark wandering around. I'm taking pictures. Somebody there like I knew him. I don't know. Could have been our next door neighbor. We went with them to a lot of things like this. And this is the parade. Don't come out too well. I think that was a big line. Them lights cause automatic lens opening to go crazy. And here we are back on the lake. That must be jack skiing. He got really good on them skis, which is quite an accomplishment and a rare thing for a person that don't swim, never did swim. I'd say that there's very few people ever managed that accomplishment without swimming. And this is their campground, or what we call a campground, I think. No, I'm not sure. I went to a little island there. We called it their private island on the lake. This is back at Mom and Dad's place on the farm. And we must be in the air here. I think we're in a cloud, the way it looks. The wing of the plane. We're so close, just on top of skimming along the top of the cloud, the visibility is not the absolute best. And back at Mom and Dad's. Tony. That's Jason, I believe. Lance and Denise. Tony's the oldest, Jason was middle, and Lance was the youngest. Well, Denise was actually the oldest of all of them. And some of Dad's flowers. He always had a lot of flowers, beautiful flowers. It's the coccyx combs. There's Norman. Taking a picture into the skyline, causing an underexposure of the house. And that, don't know. Tony and somebody playing. Hey, that's the gate at Fort Lewis, Washington. So this is after we went out in September of '67 to Fort Lewis, Washington. That was my workplace there, inside the fort anyway. And we lived to the right up at Olympia. Olympia is actually in Washington, I guess. Yeah. Don't think it's in Oregon. That we lived there. We got a suite in I guess you call it a cabin, Pine Lodge Motel, and we lived there in September until February. September of '67 until February of '68, at which time we went back to Kentucky for a short time, where we left our mobile home set up at Dixie Trailer Court, where Helen would live until I made my tour in Vietnam of 12 months and got back in March of '68. And that's a car we bought out there in Washington. That's forget what kind of car it is. Chrysler, something or other. Anyway, the big old Chrysler. We had left the Mustang back in Kentucky. We'd put it in the garage at Dad's, not the garage, in the barn at Dad's house, Mom and Dad's house on the farm. That's Dam. I guess we're down in Oregon here. We drove down through the mountains and all, and along Puget Sound. And this, I'm not sure if that's a picture of the glacier up on Mount Rainier. Must be. No, we're down in Oregon though. Tony. Nope, didn't get close enough to get the sign. But all this is September, October period of '67. Not too much snow there, so that's when you wanted to get the big snow, we went up on Mount Rainier, and that's a tree, piece of a tree that was cut, and they put all that information on it. Tells how old the tree was down at the bottom, I think it was, and it was hundreds and hundreds of years old. It had been one big tree, no doubt. And this is where they float all them logs down to where they're loaded on ships and taken all over the world to provide wood, lumber, paper, whatever. That's our car. And this is something to do with the lumber industry, probably paper mills. Paper mills, sawmills or something. And this is the shopping center there in Olympia. And we're getting close to Christmas of '67 because they had the big Santa Claus up. Just some shots on it, one of our drives. I'm not sure where it's at. Puget Sound. Don't think it's a lake. I think it's the sound. It didn't snow and didn't get real cold, and the bridge, some of the road system there in the area. On the freeway. I think we're heading up to Seattle, Washington on this trip. Yep, and that must be the Space Needle or whatever you call it. That's a leftover from the World's Fair of '61 or sometime about that time, '61 or '65. I'm not sure when they had the World's Fair there. There's a revolving restaurant on top there. You take the elevator up to it, and you can eat, and the saucer, flying saucer, whatever it's supposed to represent, revolves slowly, so you continually getting a different view of the Seattle, Washington area. And this is just in and around the area of the old World's Fair site. Fountains. Let's see, if they have the World's Fair, had it every 10 years, 56, or 58, 57. Oh wait, I can't remember. 58. They had it in Brussels, Belgium. We made that one, and we made the one in Knoxville. This is still the World's Fair area. We made the one in Knoxville, Tennessee. 85. I think it was, or 87, somewhere. I'm not sure. Tony sitting down and Helen behind him, admiring the fountain. It sort of changes shapes and does different things. And Tony posing. Highway 5. You can take Highway 5. Highway 5 all the way from Seattle, the state capital at St. Paul. But you can take Highway 5 down the coast all the way from Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, California, on down around, well, I guess it goes into Florida. Don't remember where this is at. Oh, that's where we live. That's the swimming pool. This is Pine Lodge Motel at Olympia. And that's where we lived, right there. I think it was a little bit too cool for the swimming pool, even though it was a heated swimming pool. We didn't do any swimming between September and February. Pine Lodge Apartments. It had been a motel, and they had changed them over to apartments. Ship coming into the dock.
Come on.
I said a dock. It's a little ferry or a tugboat one, it looks like. And this is the Imperial, Chrysler Imperial we got. We decided we like Chrysler, so we jumped from the Windsor up to the Imperial. Big automobile. She was a beauty. And this, I think, might be on the road from Washington to Kentucky. Not real sure. Thought we had snow most of the way. Maybe we're just on a drive around the country. Oh, this is up on Mount Rainier. We decided we'd go up and play in the snow, so we drove up on the mountain. Did a little snowball fighting, built a snowman too, I think, and just played around for a while. That was Winter Wonderland. You wouldn't have snow down at sea level, but didn't take but about 45 minutes an hour drive up on the mountain, and it was Winter Wonderland. We could go to the ice caves, to the glacier. And we're back down on the freeway somewhere. Oh, this is near Mount Hood, Oregon, that waterfall. And we are on the road from Washington State to Kentucky. We coming back home to spend a couple of, 3 or 4 weeks. And from there, I was going to Vietnam for a year. And we stopped off Manalisa Island, little Oregon history. Can't read it. The camera just didn't have that great of a capability in getting focused. Another shot of our land boat. And there is noted by the sign was the days when the interstates were 70-mile speed limits and 50 mile an hour for trucks. Didn't read the road sign there. I don't know where we're at this point. This is sometime before we hit the Continental Divide, because when we started crossing the Continental Divide, then we were in ice and snow. And in February, it's a rare thing when you can cross it without any problems, but we were lucky. We installed the chains one time coming through White Pass and left them on for maybe 50, 75 miles, and then we took them off, and that was it. And this is some of those ice and snow conditions that we encountered at higher elevation. I can't remember what the elevation at the highest point was, which it's just outside, what I call outside of Laramie. It's in Wyoming, where the rifleman was from in the movie, the serial on television. I can't remember what it. Laramie, I think. And then when we got coming down, we come out of the snow as we come out of the mountains, and we headed down the valley to Denver, Colorado. And it took, we left at night. I drove all night that night, all day the next night. I drove 2 nights and almost 2 days, and then stopped finally, dead tired in Denver, Colorado, and slept for about 10 or 12 hours. And swore I'd never make the trip in an automobile again. So that's one of the longest drives I ever made, and without stopping but one time. And that was in Denver, Colorado. Let's see. I don't think we made another stop. 3,600 miles. Needless to say, when I hit the road, I was anxious to get to my destination, and we was wanting to get home, had more time there, so we didn't want to waste it staying overnight and on the road. I don't know where we're at here or what state. Oil wells must have been Oklahoma. Yep, there's the Twin Bridges, Memphis, Tennessee. Wait, Memphis, because we come in to St. Louis, Missouri. Must be Kentucky Lake, or part of the backwater from Kentucky Lake. No, that's Jack's place. Jack and Edith, they're one of their lakes. That's the lower lake there, and we're at the upper lake, which is up above, and the overflow feeds that lake down there. At Finley Ridge, not too far from Campbellsville, Kentucky. That's the boathouse. And that's Helen going into Norman's house at New Albany, Indiana. And this is Vietnam. This is not where I live. That's got to be Long Bend. Yeah. That's some of the hooch girls coming in. They did laundry for the people and cleaned the hooches and all. Filled up the sandbags and built our bunkers. That's a perimeter emplacement. The guard there had the controls for the Claymore mines, which were out on the pointed out away from the compound in case the VC tried sneaking in on us. Needless to say, once in a while them guys get nervous and blow the claymores, and they'd have to be reset. They had to be set in concrete because VC'd slip up and turn them suckers around and rattle the bushes. They're constantly in the wire, and the guard would set it off and just shoot himself, or at least toward himself in the compound. So we set them in concrete so they couldn't turn them around and do that. And that is the bathhouse there that's got the tank up above it. You can get a bath, and that's before we got our well, and it was like your skin would crawl from the and that's the hooch I lived in. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, that's. See now, yeah, that's one I lived in. We were just building them suckers. And it was like living in a palace after roughing it. Lookout point, a tower. Getting a little fuzz on the projector there. It's building up and obstructing the view quite a bit. You have that old 8mm film sort of had a magnet for attracting lint or things, and that's one of the drawbacks of using it. These modern day VCR tapes don't do that. And a few incoming or outgoing rounds. I guess we're firing H&I. We would fire the big guns out toward the jungle just to let Charlie know it wasn't safe for him to try to sneak up on us, because the next round might just land on him. It was called H&I, or harassment fire. And this is heading into Saigon. The big city. Not a place you'd want to be on the streets at night. Water buffalo, and things be wandering around. Every once in a while our people would kill one thinking that it was the VC trying to sneak up on them. But to these people, they used them as work animals. And if they starved them to death, they wouldn't kill them water buffalo. They were sort of a sacred animal, like the Indians. people in India look upon them, I guess. Some of the squalid living conditions of the local natives. Well, that's the compound at Tonsanut. Or the air base. Where the troops flew into and out of. It was more or less an international airport, but big enough to accommodate large passenger jets. Camp Alpha Directory. Personnel returning to U.S. and it had instructions on leave all your jungle fatigues, jungle boots, so that they could be issued to incoming troops, so the departing would leave theirs and they would laundry them, and incoming troops would have some to wear, because cotton over there absorbed the moisture, and you'd get up and it was like putting on wet clothes. Them people really had nice places to live in. Compared to the other standards over there anyway. And that was driving through Vietnam, probably down Cong Ly Avenue, heading back out of the big city to go home. It's part of the Delta, a major river that supplies could be shipped, and gunboats run that quite often. Our people had quad 50s mounted on boats, and they called it the Wolverine Patrol. 5th Battalion, 2nd Artillery. We had the quad 50s, which are 4 machine guns, 50 caliber, mounted on a tripod where one man can fire all of them and control them. It was all automated. It's a Buddhist temple up on the hill there. And the Dusters, which were a light tank chassis with twin 40mm cannons mounted on it. It sounded like a pom-pom when they fired. 70 rounds out of each barrel per minute, making it a total of 140 rounds per minute. When you had it on automatic and the control was in the floor, you just tromped it like a gas pedal and it'd start firing as long as it had ammunition. And a 40mm round's pretty big. This is passing Long Bend, which contained MAC-V, moved up there toward the ending of '67, and 24th Evacuation Hospital, which Daryl Ludwig was there. He worked in the emergency room there at the 24th Evac Hospital. And the Long Bend had a little PX, so it was sort of a treat to get to go into Long Bend. Fifth Battalion of the second, 5th Battalion of the 2nd Artillery. There's where blew one off the road. Was the last military compound on Highway 1 coming out of Saigon. It was about 2-hour drive out of Saigon up Highway 1 heading north. And it was the last major, well, I won't even call it a major, it was the last military, U.S. Army military complex. The first one if you were coming out of North Vietnam. It's passing our hero from, I think the French had built that monument. Don't know what that big building was. Just taken from Highway 1. That's a guard compound. Well, it's sort of a guard point. Protect the bridge, keep the VC from blowing the bridge up. This is the palace. That's Diem's palace in Saigon. Must have went back to Saigon, and that's the government. To call President Diem built himself a big palace from the American money, of course. That's some of the white mice guarding the compound or the palace. I think the film sort of acting up here. Lots of guards, and they even water the lawn and keep it sucker nice. Bicycles, and that was a taxi there. They used them. They were a motorcycle copied after the old Chinese, I forget what they're called, the ones you pushed. There's one there. Except that's operated from a bicycle. Those are taxis. the typical Vietnamese traditional dress for a female who's well off financially, I guess. Well, they all like to dress like that, and I guess it didn't require a whole lot of money to be able to. A cathedral. The Catholics had converted quite a few of the Vietnamese, I guess. It seemed like most of them were Buddhist, and not a whole lot of them would admit to being non-Christian. If you ask them, they would, most of them that spoke English anyway, would tell you they were Christian. But most of them felt that you wouldn't like them or accept them if they said they were Buddhist. And the marketplace. You could buy mostly American things that had been stolen there, and it was unbelievable. You couldn't find it in a PX or something, or couldn't get it through military supply channels, but you could buy it on the black market. Whether it be American cigarettes of any brand, or an electrical generator. That was another form of taxi back there, pulled by a little mule, donkey. And that's just pictures of what I thought was the finer life of the big city. Another guard. Oh, wait, this is the American annex to the embassy. American Embassy Annex. I went down with the chaplain there. Went down, he was checking into obtaining documentation for adoption of somebody was wanting to adopt a Vietnamese child or something they'd found whose parents had been killed. And this is a tree that when the limbs dropped down, they would take root, and it was just a crazy mixed up tree. You could walk in under it and amongst the roots that were growing out of the ground, or whatever it was, limbs. Looked to be very, very old, but it was interesting and definitely different. And this is Kong Lee. I don't think it was a boulevard, Kong Lee Boulevard. It may have been Kong Lee Avenue, but I think it was Kong Lee Boulevard. Since the North have taken over Saigon, I'm sure they renamed the streets just like they did Saigon. Saigon is no longer called Saigon. It's called, I can't remember who the North Vietnam leader was now, named after him. And this is must be, yeah, it's our compound, because there's the bathhouse, latrine and the bathhouse. And this is some of my crew from personnel. I can't remember their names though now. This was in 67. This is 94. Quite a few years. Close to 30. Wow. That's our sandbagging detail or crew. Indigenous help, labor.